Welcome, everybody, to the Social Dance Theory podcast and the second edition episode journal entry in this log. I realized last time that the podcast was a little more formal than I wanted it to be, and so I did some adjustments. This is also the first version of the podcast that is available in video form. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or any other place in which only audio is available, you can go over to the YouTube channel, Social Dance Theory, and catch this episode of the podcast in a visual format. My name is Kaishon. I am talking about all things that have to do with social dancing, and today we're going to be talking about what dances to start with. So our last episode was kind of the where, the how, the why, the what of social dance theory and social dancing, and today we're going to be talking about what dances are going to be useful for you when you're just starting your journey. The first thing that we should really talk about is what will be useful for you. What are you looking for in a dance? Are you looking to go to a wedding? Are you looking to dance at a bar? Are you looking to connect intimately with your partner? Are you looking to have fun with friends and family or with your church? Things like that. That's what you're going to be looking for when you're trying to determine what dance you should start with. Now, I like to present the dances on a spectrum from 1 to 10 as far as their base difficulty goes. 0 being obviously not very difficult at all. Of course, difficulty is subjective. So in this case, I'm measuring difficulty based on your foot position and your dance position, but mainly your foot position, as well as your rhythm, okay? So when we look at a dance such as merengue, for instance, you have 2 steps. Obviously, there's regional variants, but the version of merengue that I understand is side together or march. And that is pretty much the basic. And so we use merengue to show students how they can get started with enthusiastic movement, if you will. And that dance in particular allows you to focus on your dance position more than anything else. So having just 2 steps will allow you to free up your mind so that as you move around the dance floor, you can get your hips moving, your body moving a little bit more, but you can mainly focus on transitioning from, say, closed position to open position, as is the case with many different variations of the arm slide or sunshine or whichever way you want to call it. Or you can use movements like closed position to open position to hammerlock or to cuddle. It'll allow you to practice transitioning between those dance positions as easily as possible. And so that is the value of your merengue. Now, as far as other dances that have 2 steps go, you could look at the country swing, which is very popular in my home state, Idaho. And it might be the only place in which country swing is actually found as far as a popular dance style that people use out and about. But there's many variations to the basic for country swing. The variation that I see the most of is to cross outside partner with your right foot and then close, turning in a clockwise pattern and open position. And some DVDs / kind of oral tradition from other students I've encountered will show you what we call illusion turns, which is kind of inverting yourself in an inside turn as a lead and then bringing your partner in an inside turn or to cuddle step and then maneuvering in those positions and alternating. Or you might see an example of crossing outside partner with the right foot, reversing that action, and then crossing outside partner with the left foot. And so you'll see many variations, but I like the cross and close method for country swing, and it's definitely a basic that is easy to pick up, and it allows you to get dancing almost immediately. And so that too is a dance style that you can focus on your dance position in. That being said, those are considered kind of a 0 on the scale. In other words, it requires almost no dance experience at all, and it requires very low mobility. So it's not very athletic, and it's not very technical from a movement perspective. And so you can do both of those dances relatively easy. Now, as a side note, what makes dances that have simple foot position or simple footwork very useful is that you can do a lot of lifts and tricks and other kind of auxiliary movements with those dance styles. So a lot of times you'll see a lot of dips, a lot of lifts, a lot of aerials with country western swing, mainly because you do not have to worry about your footwork. So as soon as you are done performing the action, you are able to go back to your regular basic without having to think too much about it. And it matches the style of the dance. As you watch people dance on the floor to country western swing, you'll find that they are a lot more energetic, a lot more social. A lot of times they're inebriated, so it produces this dynamic of recklessness and freedom in the dance style, which is really fun for some people, but it's also exclusionary, I would say, for older folks who are really just looking to connect with one another, and they remember the dances of old, if you will. And so I've found that some of my older students find it too rowdy of a dance style to practice at first. So as a smaller segment, you want to look at 0 to 10. How difficult is the dance style going to be? Then what you can look at after that point is how complex is the footwork. And that might be a criteria for determining the difficulty of the dance. But I've found that students vary in their ability to perform complex footwork. And it also depends on what you consider complex. If you take Latin dancing, for instance, using Latin motion or Cuban motion, you'll notice that you're rolling from the inside edge of the ball of the foot to a flat foot, or from ball to flat, as we say. And for some students, that is really complex. For native Latin Americans, though, they don't find their hip motion to be that complicated when trying to execute the footwork. And so they might consider a dance like salsa to be easier, or cumbia, or bachata. They might find those dance styles to be easier because they are used to moving their hips already, and so the movement of your body is not such a learning curve. Whereas for people who have never danced in their lives, or who are unfamiliar with dancing in general, or moving their body in a sensual way or a energetic way, they might be intimidated by Latin motion, and therefore salsa might be higher on the scale or the continuum in its difficulty. That being said, you can look at other rhythm dances such as swing dancing, East Coast, West Coast, and there are different criteria within those dance styles. So for the most part, when you're getting started with your dance journey, the first thing that you're going to do is look at the general difficulty of the dance. For people who have danced the dance styles a lot, you can ask for advice and say, which dance style do you prefer and why? And oftentimes you'll get answers such as, well, I like to get in touch with my femininity, perhaps. And so a more sensual swing style such as West Coast swing, which is very flirtatious, very smooth, very elastic. You might find students who really prefer that dance style because they can connect with the energy of the dance. And so they might have started in West Coast swing, and oftentimes you'll find them sticking to West Coast swing and not really branching out to other dance styles. So definitely poll the experience of other dance teachers and dance students and see why they might prefer one dance over another. So that's how you're going to get started, is you're going to assess the difficulty of the dance that you would like to learn. Okay, so that's if you're starting from just a new mind, trying to get into all dances equally with no discrimination, as you might say, between any of them. You would start at a dance that is hopefully maybe a 0 to 3 range. After that point, what you're going to do is try and determine where you're going with your dance journey. So let's say that you want to start dancing Argentine tango. Some schools of thought would just throw you into the mix and not worry about the progression or working up to a dance style that is that difficult. And I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy pedagogically, mainly because I want to make sure that you have a near 100% success rate as far as your ability to dance. And so I never want to put you into a position in which you will be discouraged by how difficult a dance is. So let's say you're trying to learn something like Argentine tango. I would say that you would start, again, with a dance that's a little less difficult, but will teach you the foundational elements that you might need in order to learn Argentine tango in the long run. So let's say you plan out 6 months where you're going to get better at dancing, and you use other dances to learn the dance positions, learn the footwork techniques, such as supporting leg action, taking heel to toe steps or ball to flat steps, depending. Argentine tango, I think, is classified as a rhythm dance, so it would be confusing if you're kind of transitioning from the smooth realm of ball to toe, from heel to toe steps or toe to heel steps, and then transitioning to kind of a ball to flat action. So you would use dances to stair step your way up to Argentine tango. Or if you consider salsa to be hard because of Latin motion, again, you might consider using merengue because you only have 2 steps and you can practice transitioning from ball to flat, ball to flat, ball to flat over and over again. Of course, in some ways it has a weakness because it's often danced in the line of dance, which means that it's lateral Latin motion only. So you might consider turning it into a spot dance and moving forward and back and around and making sure that you're comfortable with moving your hips. So that's how you're going to get started, okay? Choosing a dance style that you can either work up to or is already in advance easy enough for you to just get started with. Now, after you have chosen a dance, you want to choose your purpose. So again, if you are trying to go to a wedding or go to a dance hall, you will look at the existing dance culture in the dance hall, or you will look at the music that's being played at the wedding, and you will try and learn a dance that can best fit the genre of music or the style of dancing that you're trying to work into. So oftentimes clubs have themes to them, such as a West Coast swing club or country western swing club or Ocho's, a tango bar, right? And so obviously you're going to want to look at their itinerary and see, okay, are they dancing salsa and Argentine tango only? Do some people, sometimes you can go to the venue and feel out whether they are open to other dance styles or whether after a certain time limit, let's say 2 hours in, the DJ starts to play other more diverse music. A lot of times you'll see a dance lesson up front and then an hour of social dancing that is strictly ballroom or strictly the dance style that they've been marketing. And then the after party or the dance after the dance for 2 to 3 hours or until 1 o'clock in the morning or whenever the bar shuts down, they'll play general music. And so those are the type of things you want to research when looking at a venue. And then, of course, at a wedding, you just want to look for classics. Most times people are not designing their own playlist. They're hiring a DJ. And so what they are looking to do is have a good balance of mainly fast songs that will get the crowd going with very few slow songs. So let's say waltz and rumba as dance styles, which are both considered slow dances. American waltz, that is, and American rumba. You might not find those styles very useful in some contexts because there is not a lot of slow music that's being played at the venue that you're trying to dance at or the wedding that you're trying to go to. And so you might, again, learn something like country western swing or the hustle or the merengue in order to have a fast, easy, social step that you can maintain throughout the wedding, something that does not require a lot of thought and does not require a lot of technique. Because another thing that you'll consider when choosing a purpose for dancing is that, let's say if you're going to a wedding. Well, when I go to a wedding as an instructor, I'm looking to dance with most of the guests at the wedding if they ask me to. Oftentimes I will bring a partner, but for the most part, I'm going to try and entertain as many guests as I possibly can. It's part of my job. If I teach your wedding lessons, I'm going to follow up, come to your wedding, dance with your guests. And so with that technique in mind, I don't want to come prepared with a dance style that is very hard to teach somebody on the spot. I want to choose something that I could teach pretty much anybody immediately as soon as they are wanting to dance with me or I'm wanting to dance with them. As a student, it gets even more difficult because you might not be used to practicing or innovating with the rhythms and the dance styles that you have in your toolbox yet. You may not dance every day like I do, and therefore you may not be used to trying to adapt your dance style that you have to the music that is at the wedding. So the best case scenario is that you safely assume that there's going to be generally steady paced or fast paced music, and therefore choose your dance style accordingly. Okay, so where you're going to dance is super important for that reason. And we could go over a ton of other scenarios in which you might choose one dance or another in order to train with, but we'll go ahead and move on from that point and move on to our next point, which is, as I stated before, bring a partner. So when you start your dance journey, it will be very helpful for you to train with a consistent partner. You might reach out to a friend or a classmate or a date or whoever and see if they would be open to going on the dance journey with you. Now, obviously, there's one hindrance to this, which is that if something happens between the two of you, then you would be out of partner, and therefore you have to find a new partner, right? Which is why I'm super thankful for most social dance classes rotating partners in the first place, because that kind of solves that problem. You get to be a part of the community while at the same time having your own personal dance journey to go on. But I would still recommend trying to train with a consistent partner. And the reason why is because a lot of the techniques that you'll need to practice, you won't be able to practice with a person who you're rotating with in a social dance class because you won't see them for a prolonged period of time. Most rotations, I would say, are going to last about 30 seconds to a minute tops before you're ready to rotate partners again. Again, depending on which social dance class you're in, but I like to rotate at that speed in my classes. And therefore, you won't get a lot of exposure to that same person over and over and over again. You may dance with them many times throughout the night, but as far as really getting into the meat of a technique, going very slowly, transferring from a straight leg to a bent leg, from the inside edge of the ball of your foot to a flat foot, using rotational and lateral hip movement, all these concepts that you could break down within one category. Let's say, again, it's Latin motion. That is going to be hard to do when you are rotating partners constantly. And so working consistently with a consistent partner is going to really help you on your journey to making some serious strides in your initial progression. Another reason why having a partner is really useful is when you find yourself in an awkward social situation where you may not be familiar with the people that you are going to be dancing with or the venue that you're going to be dancing at. It's super useful to be able to call somebody up and say, hey, would you like to go with me? Because then you have low stress. You're not nervous necessarily. It is still performative, so there's that dynamic. But for the most part, you can really focus on what you're there to do, which is have fun. A lot of times, especially if you're an introvert, what you'll find is that when you get into a new social circumstance, learning a new skill, albeit a vulnerable and exposing skill, such as dancing, something that people already consider themselves not very good at in the first place, that can be a lot all at once. And so what you'll want to do is try and limit that as much as possible. Try and limit all of the things that will create a non-conducive dance environment for you or experience for you. Because of course, at the end of the day, if it comes between dancing and not dancing, we want you to dance. And we don't want you to be horrified every time that you go out to attempt to do some social dancing. And so I would say a consistent partner will help with that. And it also builds community because let's be honest, social dancing is really fun. Ballroom dancing is really fun. And so you might have a friend that you're trying to connect with more. And I would argue that there's not very many ways to do that are as beneficial as social dancing. It hits all markers in my mind, spiritual, emotional, physical health, and it allows you to increase your cognitive abilities, your proprioception, and it's a great activity to do with a friend. And so I recommend training with a consistent partner when you begin your dance journey, as well as slotting out time for you to work on your technique by yourself. Okay. Which brings us to our next point, which is not getting bogged down in technique, but instead focusing on overarching concepts or blocks of learning, as we might say. So I don't know if this is revolutionary to anybody, but essentially, the way I like to think of dancing is initially you have this panoply before you of various colors, like you might see in a Michael's or any arts and crafts store, right? You walk in and you see a bunch of canvases and a bunch of paint, and you might be completely intimidated because of how many different colors there are to choose from, how many different brushes there are to choose from, how many different little gadgets can help you in your journey, right? And so what we would recommend if you were an artist is pick a brush set that's already curated for you. Don't try and, pick out your own individual brushes or whatever yet. Just pick out a brush set that has all, a big brush, a small brush, a detail brush, and start painting. Don't worry about purchasing super expensive materials that you may not know how to use properly, and you might actually choose something that you don't know how to use and ruin it and spend a lot of money because you don't understand how to use it. And the same thing goes for dancing as well. When you try and work on technique too much in the beginning, what will happen is you'll become frustrated because you don't have enough experience to catch the minutia of your movement. So let's say your hips don't look the way you want to. I keep on using Latin motion as an example because it's a very easy metaphor to draw. Well, that might be because your leg isn't straight enough. We understand that mechanically Latin motion works from transitioning from a bent leg to a straight leg and back and forth. And so maybe the standing leg or the straight leg that you're on isn't bent enough and your knee is not at the proper angle, and so it doesn't accentuate the hips very well, and you might not be experienced enough to look at that and identify that in the mirror. Or let's say more advanced techniques with hip movement, which is using your rib cage to counteract the hip motion that you're producing. All of that would be over a beginner's head at first, because what they're really wanting to do is have fun. And if they get bogged down in the technique and the details of it all almost immediately, well, that sets them up for a very tumultuous journey. A lot of people do way better when they get exposed to a lot of moves up front. Whether we like it or not, as instructors or as students, people like moves. They don't like to get bogged down. I've found a lot of students, for instance, don't like smooth dancing at first. Waltz, Tango, Foxtrot, WTF, because it takes a lot of technique. You essentially have to learn how to walk again. That's not to mention alignments, promenade as an entire concept, because promenade is super hard sometimes to master. Just using your nose and toes, but keeping your hips and chest and everything connected in the correct line. The fifth point of connection, using your rib cage to lead your partner, body leading, swing and sway. All those things are super hardcore at first. And so a lot of students don't like the learning curve that smooth dancing presents. And rhythm dancing is a lot more exciting because the moves feel like moves. They're not just maneuvers or navigational tools. They're actually moves, dance moves that you can memorize. And so a lot of people feel like they've progressed more when they learn a lot of fancy moves. And so at first, as you're beginning your dance journey, it would be good for you to focus on dance position specifically. And back to point one, find a dance style in which dance position is king, such as country western swing or merengue. Because then what you can do, as I say to my students, is maintain your footwork on the bottom and do some kung fu on the top, and you'll find yourself able to get into certain positions with ease. Once you've mastered getting into those positions, you can then add the footwork, or if you want to do that in reverse order, however. But the point is, footwork in and of itself can exist in and of itself. It is okay for all footwork to be flat or ball to flat, excluding technique at first so that you can get into the swing of things, no pun intended, and start moving immediately. Because we want you to be inspired enough to work on your technique in the first place, and you're not probably going to be inspired enough if you get bogged down in the technique that you're trying to do. And that's a whole nother video in and of itself as far as how to approach technique, or what I think, is a good way to approach technique. But yeah, so I would say that that's the next point, is to not get bogged down in technique, to definitely start with dance position and foot position almost exclusively, and learn the dance like that, okay? And I would say the last tip for this video or this podcast is for you to practice. Repeat. And as a bonus tip or a sub point with that, as you practice, make sure that you understand that the concepts themselves are not in and of themselves unique. So when we name a move within the ballroom dance vernacular, you'll encounter a move that's called the pretzel, or the matador, or the egg beater, or the double egg beater. And it becomes a problem because you have all these fancy names, and you would think that that would be easier for you to recall. But what it actually does is produce a challenge, because now you have 17 unique things for you to memorize and remember. Whereas if you look at the foundational elements of how the move is comprised, let's say it's hammerlock, let's say it's pretzel. We know that pretzel, as many people have demonstrated it, starts an inverted hammerlock. In other words, the lead rolls into hammerlock and then allows the follow to duck under the arm from the left side, then to the right side. Then he himself ducks under his own arm and then pulls the follow into cuddle at the last minute. Now, what's interesting about that is those are 4 different positions: inverted hammerlock, back-to-back position, or what you might consider parallel position, back-to-back position, transitioning into reverse inverted hammerlock, into inverted cuddle, into regular cuddle. And, you could debate whether inverted cuddle is in there. But the point is that there are 4 dance positions that you will transition into, and all of them then comprise the pretzel. And so it would be nice if the pretzel in and of itself, just saying the pretzel, was enough to cue you on remembering what the move is, but it's not. All that pretzel tells you is that you're tied up somehow, some way. When really, if you were to focus on dance position and understand that really in most rhythm dances, especially swing dancing, you're going to encounter cuddle or wrap or basket or whichever way you call it, and hammerlock. One is an outside turn without letting go, and one is an inside turn without letting go. And those 2 positions are then going to be milked of their potential for the next 10 moves. You're going to see patterns over and over and over again. Some syllabi go into man turns, before you get into more advanced combinations with cuddle and hammerlock. But for the most part, you're going to see those movements dominate a lot of the first initial moves that you're going to do. That and tuck and turns for swing are pretty popular. And so when you are practicing, what you can do is break a step down by its dance position and understand that you can recycle the concepts that you've learned from other moves. If you already know how to do the hammerlock, if you understand that hammerlock is one arm being chicken wing behind the back and the other arm being extended out in front of the chest, and you understand that wrap or cuddle or basket or whichever way you want to call it is one of your arms over the top with the other arm tucked at the follows small of her back, creating kind of a straight jacket look or a wrap. If you understand the mechanics of that, which hand's on top, which hand's on bottom, how am I going to get out of this? Am I going to do a rollout? Am I going to send her back out into open position? Those type of things are really good to practice slowly and have detail-oriented processes so that you can understand exactly what makes up the move in the first place. What you'll find a lot of times is that dancing is sleight of hand. It's like card tricks. Really, it is. Because if you do something slow, if you did a card trick very slowly in front of somebody's face, that wouldn't be a trick because we would be able to see what you do, which is, tuck the card into your sleeve. This produces a problem because there is no necessarily trick to it so much as the art of distraction, right? If I do the same trick that I did slowly, quickly, and the card flies into my sleeve, then obviously that results in you being tricked, you being duped, you feeling as if some magic just occurred. And dancing is no different. If we practice the move slowly, element by element, dance position by dance position, over and over and over again, then when you do it quickly, it'll seem like magic. And that's where when you watch dance steps or when you watch professionals dance, you often get discouraged because you think that you can't perform the move that they're performing, when in reality, they're doing the exact same moves you're doing, but with style. They have been coached or taught or trained how to do that move in such a way that it milks it of all of its potential while still keeping the elements the same. And so, tip number 5 is to break the move down to elements, practice, 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 repeat, repeat, repeat. When you practice, try and practice with a consistent partner. Choose a dance that's difficulty is not going to intimidate you, and keep your venue in mind as you're moving through the dance world and starting your dance journey. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll see you later.